It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And I've taken a couple of cracks at this video because I've been oversharing. And I don't want to overshare right now. There's been I don't consider it oversharing to this point, but, it's been a rough couple months for me. And, I am somebody who prefers to tell people what is going on, honestly, right? In part because I work with a lot of men terrified of being vulnerable. And I can't tell them it's okay and then not share what's going on with me. That's not practicing what you preach, right? That's being a hypocrite. And I get judged for it. I get criticized for it. And ironically, one of the things I get criticized is you can't handle criticism, which is just absurd. If that were true, I would have quit this YouTube thing a long time ago. I wouldn't be a public person, right? Because criticism is part of the territory. And that's what I want to talk about. This wasn't what I originally was going to talk about. It's sort of adjacent to it, but I was working one-on-one with somebody and the topic of, feeling weak came up. And I said to him, we're not weak people because we have weak points. And I thought that is something everybody needs to hear, right? Superman has kryptonite. Green Lantern has the color yellow, right? Superheroes have a weakness for a reason. We talk a lot about, Mary Sue's characters that don't actually, that's a tricky one because it means different things to different people. But the flaws in a character identified as a Mary Sue tend to be sort of too accepted by the narrative. There's very few negative consequences. That to me is more accurate than how it's normally described. And that's not life. This idea that, everybody is just going to embrace you because you're so inherently good. That's a really, really insidious lie that a lot of fiction tells people. Just because people are mad at you doesn't mean you did something wrong. Just because people demonize you doesn't mean you're the devil. If your intentions were good, it doesn't matter how many people try to tell you otherwise. You know whether you meant to or not. Now, if the outcomes aren't matching your intentions, well, okay, some changes have to be made with your approach. But that's not the same as doing it on purpose. And frankly, I didn't mean to has been kind of ruined by people coming at things in bad faith. Unfortunately, I didn't mean to is often code for, I'm going to do it again. Too bad. You're supposed to understand why I did it. I'm not supposed to make any changes to make things easier for you too. Compromise is too often seen as weakness nowadays. And it's not. The ability to compromise when it makes sense and to be uncompromising when it also makes sense. That's a life skill. And that's more art than science. And feeling weak because you have weak points actually makes you less able to protect those weak points from people who probably don't have your best interests at heart. If somebody is motivating you or trying to motivate you through running you down or insulting you and insisting you just can't handle it somehow, that's a problem. Don't listen to those people. A person who really wants to help you grow and improve will be, okay, what's this doing for you? This thing? Like, I try to be very clear when I give someone a criticism that if it's something like they're doing something that is coming across in a way that really isn't helping them, If I think they're doing it deliberately, I'm not going to tell them. What's the point? Right? I only point it out to people if I think they're unaware of how it's reading. And so I say, look, I know you probably don't intend this, but this is coming off as bullying or manipulative and it's amazing how many people cannot take that. And I'm sorry, that is the kindest way to let somebody know. And that's an example of being nice versus being kind, right? Being kind is having the tough conversation so they have the opportunity to come off in a way that more meets their intentions. Being nice is just not saying anything to avoid the conflict in the short term, right? Nice is often not kind. And sometimes the kindest thing is to not be nice in that moment. But, come in as gently as you can. And that's the funny thing about people, that a lot of people miss the earlier, kinder attempts to break it to someone gently. And they're just so, they're all over the place that they only hear you when all of a sudden it's absolutely not. And then I'm a bitch. Right? And I can't think of another word like that has caused so much damage to men and women alike, right? Men are terrified of being emotionally authentic, including vulnerable emotions, because they'll be called a little bitch. Women, you be forceful about anything. It's too easy to just go, what a bitch, and not try to understand why you got that strong reaction, right? It's just too easy to dismiss women who get angry. And I have a fight response. I do. Nobody chooses their stress response, right? Men who fawn get called little bitches, simp, that whole thing, but they can't help it. Whereas women who have a fight response like me, we're pretty rare, but we do exist, and we're seen as bitchy. Thing is, I know, and this is what I mean, is like, you gotta know your weak points so that people can't make you feel weak, because somebody called me emotional over the weekend behind my back when I was actually being like, no, this is inappropriate behavior. This is bad for the production. This stops now. But they were undermining me, and there's somebody who knows better. And again, it was a women's show, and the person said it to another woman who went, woo boy. And that was the entire problem, right? But some people just can't stop, and they are so afraid of being weak that they will undermine and make everyone around them look bad, try to make them look worse so that they don't have to admit or don't have to really face that they have stuff they have to work on. And everyone has things they need to work on. I don't like going off on people. I go out of my way to avoid it. And that's the thing. When I do, they had multiple times where they were told, please don't do that. Please don't do that. I have been very clear to everybody I work with that I've had a rough couple of months. It's not a surprise. And so if someone's going to keep pushing me unnecessarily, right? There was no reason to fuck around and find out here. I'm not going to feel bad about going off on them. And, it's the thing. I've gotten quite practiced in my fight response. I don't call names. I don't use abusive tactics. And it's apparently worse because I am so surgical. I focus on behaviors so much. And it's like, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. And most people just run away. And that's just, I'm weak. You don't see me running. Sometimes I'll walk away, but that's different. Walking away is sometimes an incredibly self-compassionate act. If someone keeps poking at your weak points, and again, we all have them, it's not weakness to walk away from that environment. It's weaker to stay because you train people how to treat you. The idea of you just have to take it, that's weakening you. That's draining your battery. That's leaving you with less energy to do other things. And so when I say it's weaker to stay, I'm not saying you're inherently weak if you choose to stick some things out. Trust me, I have. That's where Fucktober came from, gave people too many chances, right? But I was being weakened no differently than if Superman's exposed to kryptonite. Oh my God, is Superman and Lois been good this year? Anyway, I digress. Accepting your weak points, acknowledging you have them is important to be strong. And that's the paradox here, because resilient people go, I have these areas I don't thrive in. I have these other areas where I do. I'm going to be at my strongest when I try to stay in the areas that strengthen me more than in the areas that weaken me. And we all have to be in areas that weaken us. Introvert, just did a trade show with 35,000 people. There was a moment late Saturday morning where I had this moment where I was like, I got really overwhelmed. And I was like, I want to run away and punch someone at the exact same time. And I did neither. Because I was like, you're overwhelmed. There's a ton of people. It's busy. Instead of pushing through it, I owned that. And I sat for a minute. And just stillness. Stillness is not a freeze response. Stillness is you're overwhelmed. You don't have to do anything about it right now. And if somebody comes and tries to fuck with you in exactly that moment where you need stillness, yeah, then right? Then they get Kratos. And that's most of the time when inner Kratos comes out, that's the circumstances. I'm trying to take a minute and someone's on me. And I am accountable for that by giving people plenty of warnings when I'm not doing well. I will not blame myself for going Kratos if I do some things that are shitty in that mode. I'll own that. But I've gotten pretty good at avoiding things like name calling, avoiding, ad hominems, being cruel. And that's, when people call me cruel, I know it's not true because I know all the things, even when I'm angry at someone, I know all the things I don't say out of compassion. That's the opposite of cruelty. But that's an easy thing to throw around at someone. If somebody thinks somebody is a nice, understanding person, they'll drain that person until they're dry. And every time they object, it's, oh, you're being mean. Why are you being mean? Why are you being cruel? And they suggest you meant to do it, which would be totally out of character. And here's the thing. If somebody's acting totally out of character, something is wrong. You don't criticize a person for suddenly acting out of character. That's a trauma response right there. Classic. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people believe that controlling language makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you an asshole. And what makes you strong is communicating and being open. And, the strongest act is letting people know you're not okay. Because, bad people will take that opportunity to take cracks at you, which is why I had one person tell me that either God is trying to tell me something recently or the devil is trying to take away everything I love. And I was like, wow, you'd rather believe that than a bunch of shitty people just decided to test me? Good luck with that. That's not how I see it. Because when you are on the ropes, right? When you are struggling, when you have faced a failure in public, like, having to refund Song of Sparkle Muffin backers. That's when people who don't have your best interests at heart decide to fuck around. And with me, that's when they find out. When people know I'm going through a bad time and they decide to get judgmental on me, that makes it very, very clear who they are, at least in my life. And I do not tolerate that. If somebody bothers to communicate that they're struggling, and there's been a bunch of people in the server lately who are really struggling with things. And so, they let us know they weren't doing well. And so we're more patient with, some of the behavior we have to moderate. We still moderate them, but we're like, look, we care. We're checking you because we care, because this kind of behavior will wreck things in the real world. It's a relationship wrecker. Some things just are. And I used to hit those points where it wasn't anger. It was rage, because I was so afraid of being angry that I'd just explode and be really awful to people. Just go for those, go for the throat, go for the eyes, boo. And because I couldn't feel anger, I jumped over it and went to rage. And that so often in our society gets depicted as, a strong woman or a bitch. And it's neither. It's not a person trying to be hurtful, and it's certainly not strength. It's a person who keeps pushing themselves back past their breaking point, being so afraid of weakness that they don't know how to be strong. When I learned to own when I'm angry, despite the fact that I know every time I admit it, someone's going to demonize it. Every single time. Someone is going to call me bitchy, emotional, unhinged. And that really fucking felt unfair for a really long time. It really inhibited my healing because it hurt so bad. I fell back into the bad old ways. Now, people hit me with that when I'm angry, but in control of the anger. I'm not going to go for the throat. I'm pissed off and people know it, but I'm still responsible for what I do. Someone tests me in that moment. Woo! Nope, not happening. And some people see that as weakness. Oh, she can't control her temper. Redhead, right? Easy to brand a redhead as having a temper. It's not that. It's not. It's a survival instinct that was dead for a really long time because I was so afraid of those criticisms that I was not being authentic. And that's not strength. You can't be strong if you can't be yourself. Being strong means embracing those weak points. You know, like Superman just can't convince himself to just walk into kryptonite and be fine, right? Like that would be that bullshit we feed women, right? About the pain you've been through is your strength. That's where we get like bullshit, like, you know, Mary Sue type characters. So I define those characters a little different. There's this bullshit that if you're inherently good as a woman, you can be completely out of control train wreck and people will still accept you and nurture you and help you and never abandon you. And that is fucking bullshit. Fucking bullshit. It's as bullshit as strong men never talk about their feelings. They just sit in the bar and drink, right? It's bullshit. When you're struggling, that is exactly when people will choose to try you. And real strength is, even though you're, you know, it's a raw wound, you can still go, oh, hell no. And then you start noticing that the people who are the most critical, the things they criticize you for are things they do themselves. Every person I know who goes, you can't handle criticism, they go to pieces when they're criticized. They are so messed up by that they can't even admit they're bothered. And not being able to admit you're bothered is not strength. That's disassociation. And that fucks you up. It causes you to make bad decisions. It causes you to miss warning signs. It's not strength. Not feeling is not strength. Not feeling means something inside you is so damaged that it's being shoved down and pushed down because it can't handle the world right now. Either that or you're terrified of it. And that's not strength. It's not a moral failing. And this is why I, you know, for me, PTSD is much more an emotional injury than a mental illness, right? My view on reality is not distorted. It's a bunch of things broke in the past and they didn't heal quite right. And just like, you know, I got a shit right knee, I can't pretend it's not bad. I'm, you know, if I try to do things that knee ain't going to do, I'm going to fall over, right? It's the same thing. I can't try to walk on an emotional broken leg. I'm not going to get very far. That if somebody was walking around a broken leg and wouldn't go to the doctor and was just like, yeah, your leg is broken. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's bleeding. No, you're not. Who the fuck are you? That wouldn't be seen as strength, right? That would be seen as what's wrong with you. But we do that with feelings all the time, thinking we're projecting strength. Let me tell you something about strength. You have it when you're the most vulnerable. True strength is being able to be vulnerable and yet still maintain your boundaries. Like really, really hurting and being able to be honest about it, feeling those feelings of betrayal, feeling those feelings of being used, and just going, yeah, it happened, you know? And when you do allow yourself to feel that, you see the next one coming. They are not able to take everything you've built because you were prepared. You saw the warning signs. You were honest with yourself. You made adjustments and you gave them a chance. I give plenty of people chances, right? But I know now, if you see something, say something. Give the person a chance by saying, this isn't working for me. If you can trust them, they'll make adjustments. They won't get it on the first try, right? It'll take a bit of process. Like, people still use, I love it when people are like, they say the word bitch and like, I know you don't like that word. It's like, that's enough for me, right? That's them accepting my position. That's me going, okay, you've shown respect, so you get to use that word now. You see how it works? That's a flexible boundary, right? They're acknowledging they heard me. They remembered. They just got a little caught up. And sometimes it is the appropriate word, right? Sometimes it is. Rarely, but sometimes. And I do think the overuse of the word in hip hop music, I've been working with this a lot, because a lot of the hip hop music, I love that bitches, that word, bitch, right? It's all through. I'm a bitch, you're a bitch, I'm this bitch, I'm that bitch. Lizzo responding to South Park, I'm that bitch. I think that's because hip hop is all about saying things in rhyme that you can't say day to day, right? And I do think the reason so many female hip hoppers throw that word everywhere is they're trying to find a place inside them for that accusation. And I didn't find it worked. I didn't think that, yeah, I'm that bitch. No, I don't want to be that. I don't want a hall pass for shitty behavior, right? I want to be accountable. And that word isn't exactly, no matter how much we try to reclaim it, we're never gonna quite do it. We're always gonna have an uneasy relationship with that word because it hurts men and women alike, right? It is so intrinsically tied to gender roles and expectations that's why it doesn't work for me. Kratos, right? And the challenge I get into a lot of the time is when people start treating me like a woman instead of treating me like me. And I'd have two ways to look at that. I could feel bad, and I did for a lot of years, that I don't have that proper feminine response, But I've made my peace with that. And I'm never going to be that, right? And that's the problem. I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to be the lock and load, super physical, Vi from Arcane, or some of the heavy metal characters, or, the tough girls like an Alien and Mad Max. I'm not that. We're finally getting characters like Christian from The Expanse that have this strength of will. There's finally a place for that. Michelle Yeoh plays a lot of those characters too. It's not physical strength. It's freaking witch powers, man. And that is still not, we don't have the tropes for that yet. We lost that when we lost the crone. The women have to be hot into their 60s. We lost the Granny Weatherwax, the Flemis, that type of character has been dormant. Similarly, we lost the more, it's not even a word for authentic men, the men who go through some shit, right? It's been replaced with these superheroes that I'll credit Jan Helge Lillevik, who's the author of a great book called Ismark, the Marked Boy. But he said, characters like Norse gods, superheroes, they're more embodiments of states than actual characters that are complex. And that's okay. But we have to see them for what they are. The DC characters were much more that because they originated in the 40s, whereas the whole thing with Marvel for a while was that they were allowed to be, middle class. They weren't all billionaires. They made mistakes. They screwed up. They had, they made bad decisions. But everything's just become so rote now that all of those oppositions to the cliche have become cliches. And so we've got this really, really harmful idea that men who fail at things are not men. And it's funny that that's embedded, this idea that, it's impossible odds, win anyway. They're impossible odds. You can't, And they've just sort of started in superhero fiction showing that sometimes you can't win, or you can't win right away. And we desperately need that message because, we see that reflected in everything from men not dating because they're terrified of rejection. That's closing yourself off to the world. And the truth is that it's not the I'll get falsely accused. Those do happen, but they're rare, relatively. They just are sensationalized by the media. If you really look, and this was something I had to face too, it wasn't, a man is gonna assault me. It's no, a man's gonna say you're fat and ugly. Now it's fat, ugly, and old. And I realize I hear that a lot more from women than men. But that's what I was really afraid of. That you are not enough. Or in the case of being fat, you're too much. Ew, you're disgusting. That's what I was afraid of. And it was really inhibiting. And I finally realized all I can do is my best. I don't have, a super rev metabolism. I don't. I grew these on my own. There's certain things. I don't have the nice pointy chin that is the epitome of beauty. I'm a fucking weirdo, which just takes me into another category. I'm not sweet. I'm me. And it's a waste of time for me to become a completely different person. I'm not going to be as good at being that fake person as I am being the real me. It's not authentic. And the only reason I would be trying to be a completely different person, which I did for, I was pretty much told in TV, you have to be a completely different person for anybody to like you. And I couldn't. It wasn't good for me. Those were some of the most miserable years of my life. And I'm much happier having embraced, I'm never gonna be that girl. So help me God if they fuck that song up in the Wicked movie. Oh my God, there's gonna be a war. I'm kidding. He could be that boy, but I'm not that girl. That one. I'm me. You're you. And that's not a weakness. We got things. We have to navigate. And there are moments we feel weak. Yeah, that's valid. Those are the times to slow down, right? Don't ignore it. Again, physical injury. So many people ignore physical injuries, though, when it comes from the same place. Just because you have weak points, we all do, doesn't mean you're weak. The strongest person in the world recognizes and accepts their weak points. That's why they're strong. help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching, and I don't have the thumbnail up. Be well.